For decades, we've pretty much been taught that leadership fundamentally comes with a title, right? We've operated under this assumption that if you have the corner office, well, you automatically have the power. But in today's knowledge economy, that outdated command and control model is failing, and it's failing spectacularly. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking Anupam Sharma's powerful insights on the psychology of leadership influence and turning them into a really clear, actionable roadmap. Our goal here is simple, but absolutely profound. We are going to dismantle those archaic models of leadership and unlock the true, enduring power of psychological influence. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's kick things off with a massive paradigm shift directly from the source material. It perfectly sets the tone for everything we're about to cover. Think about this statement. Authority gets compliance. Influence gets contribution. I want you to just let that sink in for a second. Compliance is your team doing exactly what you ask them to do, literally nothing more. And usually they're doing it out of this subtle sense of fear or obligation. Contribution, on the other hand, that's your team bringing their absolute best, most innovative ideas to the table because they actually genuinely care about the outcome. Authority might force a temporary action, sure, but influence is what truly inspires long-term commitment. To guide us through this explainer, we're going to treat this like an elite masterclass. We'll be moving chronologically through a 5-part playbook. The end of authority, mastering the inner battlefield, the human-centric leader, the consultant's influence playbook, and finally, strategies for 360-degree influence.
All right, part 1. The end of authority. Why influence wins in the knowledge era.
The rules of leadership have completely changed, and the contrast between the old way and the new way is honestly staggering. Authority is a pushing force, it demands action through leverage. But the harsh reality is that it expires the very second you lose your title or your formal power. Influence, however, is like a magnetic pull. It inspires action naturally, and it actually compounds with your character over time. Modern, purpose-driven professionals simply do not want a dictator overseeing their daily tasks anymore. They are actively out there searching for a coach and a mentor who can actually elevate them.
By tapping into the emotional brain rather than just issuing top-down directives, influence gives you some incredibly distinct advantages that authority could never, ever reach. For instance, it drives real emotional buy-in, because humans are fundamentally wired to follow leaders they genuinely trust. It also completely enhances creativity. Why? Because giving people autonomy unlocks bold, new ideas, while leading by fear literally shuts down the brain's creative centers. Beyond all that, it builds long-term loyalty, promotes true psychological ownership over projects, and ultimately creates voluntary high performance. It proves, time and time again, that people will always do more willingly than they ever will forcefully.
Moving right along to Section 2. Mastering the inner battlefield. Self-management first.
Okay, so before you can ever hope to manage a team, you absolutely must master yourself. Why? Well, because of a very simple, unavoidable psychological truth. People inevitably mirror the leader's energy. If you walk into a room and you are just engulfed in chaos, stress, and anxiety, that energy spreads through your team like wildfire. It instantly triggers their own stress responses. But, and here's the magic, if you project grounded calmness even in the middle of a total crisis, you become this stabilizing anchor. You simply cannot lead effectively or expect high performance if you are internally a mess.
Because of this mirroring effect we just talked about, truly great leaders have to be ruthless, and I mean ruthless, curators of their own internal environment. They don't just mindlessly react to the day's fires. No, they proactively manage their thoughts, they intentionally protect their time and energy, and they fiercely align their priorities with their core purpose. Listen, people follow who you genuinely are, not the facade you put on for a 10 a.m. status meeting. That means your brilliant, rational guidance is essentially meaningless if you don't have the emotional discipline to back it up. Without this deep, foundational self-management, the rest of your leadership playbook completely falls apart.
Okay, part 3. The human-centric leader. Managing the modern ecosystem.
So, you've mastered yourself. Now we shift our focus outward. When we look at human motivation in this wildly diverse modern workplace, it really boils down to what we call the 4 Ps. First, purpose gives your team their underlying why, injecting actual meaning into the daily grind. Second, perspective addresses how they individually view their work in the broader world. Third, promotion ensures they see a viable, exciting future for themselves within the company. But the ultimate driver, the absolute peak of the mountain here, is psychological empowerment. This is all about creating an environment where people feel completely valued and entirely safe to take calculated risks or speak up without any fear of retaliation.
That brings us to Section 4, the Consultant's Influence Playbook, Elite Frameworks for Action.
It is time to get highly tactical. We're going to use tools that elite consulting firms use to drive massive behavioral change. The PPF analysis is a foundational tool for gaining multidimensional clarity on your team. You start by looking at the past. You actively study historical conflicts and pinpoint exactly where communication gaps first formed. Then, you analyze the present to understand the current emotional temperature and the immediate motivations of your team. Only after doing that can you effectively plan for the future to build genuine cultural transformation. It's this continuous, thoughtful loop of alignment, and it actively prevents you from making the fatal mistake of applying future solutions to unhealed past traumas.
Next up is an incredibly structured communication strategy, the 4-step influence model. First, you start with data to build a solid logical foundation. Second, you tell a story to forge a real human connection. Third, you inject emotion to build long-term memory. And finally, fourth, you tie it all back to a larger purpose to build complete alignment. Imagine you're rolling out a massive new software system, right? You share the efficiency, data, sure, but then you tell a story about a specific team struggling with the clunky old system. You tap into the emotion of their everyday frustration, and you align it with the purpose of freeing up their time for meaningful work. When you stack it exactly in that order, it is undeniable.
And this brings us to the ERAC grid: eliminate, reduce, raise, and create. This is actually a brilliant adaptation of the famous Blue Ocean strategy applied directly to leadership. To build true influence, you have got to completely eliminate fear-based control and aggressively reduce stifling bureaucracy. At the exact same time, you must raise trust, transparency, and autonomy while creating a genuine culture of innovation and shared purpose. By deliberately pulling these specific strategic levers, you're essentially fostering a psychological safe haven for your top talent that your competitors simply won't be able to replicate.
Furthermore, you've got to protect the deepest behavioral drivers of your workforce. Enter the SCARF model: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. Now, this is fascinating. Neuroscience actually shows us that a threat to a person's perceived status or autonomy registers in the human brain exactly like a physical threat. It literally triggers a fight or flight response. When leaders unknowingly threaten these areas, walls go up immediately. But when you actively design your management style to protect these 5 pillars, you completely disable the brain's natural defense mechanisms, and your influence naturally skyrockets. Now, I really want you to let this next one sink in. It's the famous 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, applied directly to leadership. A staggering 80% of your overall influence is generated by just 20% of your daily behaviors. Let me say that again. 80% of your impact comes from 20% of what you do. And that vital 20%? It isn't found in checking spreadsheets, holding endless status updates, or micromanaging tasks. It's found in deep, attentive listening, demonstrating high emotional intelligence, and providing absolute clarity and inspiration. If you truly want to multiply your impact, you have to stop hyper-focusing on the administrative noise and start heavily over-indexing on these specific human behaviors.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5: Strategies for 360-degree influence, cementing your legacy.
Turning all of these high-level theories into your actual permanent legacy, that requires daily, 360-degree action. You build influence by consistently role modeling the exact behavior and work ethic you expect from everyone else. You build it through attentive listening that makes people feel truly seen and understood. You build it through genuine appreciation and empowerment that gives your team wings. But above all else, it requires unwavering consistency and unquestionable integrity. Unpredictable leaders, no matter how outwardly charismatic or brilliant they are, will eventually break trust. Consistent leaders, grounded in integrity, they're the ones who build empires.
So, the ultimate question remains: are you going to be remembered simply as a manager or as a true legend? The source material makes it abundantly clear that true leadership was never about managing tasks on a checklist. It is entirely about elevating human potential. I challenge you today to drop that heavy, outdated armor of authoritative command. Master your inner battlefield. Apply these psychological frameworks every single day and lead your team through the unmatched, enduring power of true influence. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.